Excellent. Good evening and welcome, everybody. Welcome to Barings. Welcome to Thomas Frank's Frankly Feeding. I'll introduce myself. I'm Martin. This is Marinella, the General Manager of Barings, who I'm sure you all know. And my beautiful assistant, flown in all the way from the Italian island of the Outer Hebrides from Scotland, is Jim O'Hagan, who is our pasta specialist.
Buongiorno.
So I'm almost giving away what we're going to be doing later today. So during this lockdown, we've all become master gardeners, master haircut barbers, looking like De Niro from Taxi Driver one side, and William Farrell on the front there. DIY experts as well. I'm hoping that we're all going to be expert chefs, especially after today. Before we begin, first of all, I'd like to raise a very warm thank you to Barings for allowing us to be here and hopefully bring some home comforts and joys during what's been a horrendous time for everybody. And just to briefly talk about Thomas Frank's and Frankly Feeding and feeding the live communities as we have done, where we've been supporting the NHS frontline workers, your ambulance drivers, all the way through to doctors, nurses, food, as well as the homeless as well. So bring something back into the community for that. So today, what are we doing today? Today we're cooking an old classic. The weather is deliberately not brilliant, so you need something comforting, something robust, something that requires a little bit of red wine. It is the evening, we've all worked hard. Something warming indeed. So today we're doing bolognese with tortellini. So pasta bolognese. However, we, the royal we, are making our own pasta, make our own bolognese sauce, and taking you through the journey of what we're doing. Before we begin, just a small touch point on health and safety. During these times, it's very important that we've all sanitised our hands, hand sanitisers everywhere, washed our hands. You're maintaining social distance. We've been working together in the same bubble for a number of weeks now, so we're comfortable working together in this environment. Also, in terms of your chopping board, we don't have any accidents, so we use a slip mat, just a piece of a wet towel and a chopping board to stop it moving. So when we're slicing, chopping, and working, the chopping board isn't moving with us. So today, bolognese, we've got some lovely organic minced beef that we're using for our dish. A plethora of ingredients from vine tomatoes, heritage tomatoes, celery, purple carrots, fresh herbs, brown onions, chestnut mushrooms, and a really decent wine, which I'll Marinella sourced for us especially, that I'll be touching on later. So the history of bolognese, where does it come from? Bologna, everyone knows. And we do know that Bologna, which invented bolognese, originally dish was cooked with cream, white wine, pancetta, and veal and pork. There wasn't a tomato inside. And even now, if you went to Bologna, it's very rare that you'd find tomatoes in the actual dish. However, during my period living and working in Italy, as well as my experience with Heston and Blumenthal, the conclusions being come to Sicily, indeed. So they cook with tomatoes over there. So today's an amalgamation of all my experiences to make this dish, which has many variations, as best as I can. The first thing we're going to do is potentially switch the cooker on. Ideally, imagine if we can't. Okay, it's live TV, guys. What can go wrong? And you classically would always sweat your beef off in olive oil or some kind of oil. Now, the dish is quite rich and robust, so we want to be as healthy as we can be when we can be. Now, minced beef, by virtue of definition, is quite a fatty product anyway, and you're looking at buying the fattiest, sort of at least 7 or 8% fat content in the minced beef. Because what we're going to be doing is rendering the fat with a bit of hot water. So there'll be no oil at the beginning of this cooking.
What if you use the lean meat?
The lean meat is also acceptable, but I wouldn't advise it because it creates almost a salty effect. So it's natural seasonings, you're salting less. And some fats are very good for you. For example, in Poland, where my parents are from, they have a product called Smollett, which is purely made from healthy fats, so healthy salt. And that obviously is a great way of living and working. So we're going to put a bit of water in there and then render down the beef. And what will happen now is that the fat in the beef will rise to the top. And we're going to skim that residue fat off and be left with a lean product, but with a marbling effect and flavour that it would have had by being a fat content meat. And as that's coming up to cook, we're going to begin our mise en place, French classical saying for things in place at preparation. So Marinella, if you could start peeling the carrots for me and chop them into fine dice, known as a Jim.
I think that's for you to be called brunoise.
Brunoise, indeed. So the holy trinity that chefs always work for centuries is onions, carrots, and celery. And with being an Italian authentic dish, we're putting a bit of garlic in as well. Notice the way that I peel the onions, very little wastage. And in fact, during times of potential austerity, these onion skins, the carrot peeling can be used for soups, stocks, the carrot skins can be used to caramelize down and create your own gravy browning, so you don't have to buy false gravy. So I'm just going to chop the onions down whilst Marina's doing the carrots, and then moving on to celery, which has been pre-washed. Make sure you guys always wash your celery.
Watch your fingers there, Chef.
I'm indeed. I take Jim everywhere with me, see? It works well. We have lots of seasoning today. We have salt and pepper, the classic, paprika to add a smoky robustness, dried oregano and parsley, balsamic, tomato puree, loads of ingredients. And if you prepare well in advance, there's no reason to panic. You can have it set out the night before or in the morning for the evening. You can have your guests around, as social distancing is allowed to include more people to your house. And look like a real professional. Fantastic. So, as I'm starting to incorporate the onions into the dish, Marina's did an expert job of cutting the carrots. We're going to move on to Jim now, who's going to prepare the pasta for us. Jim, over to you.
Hello, everybody. So, first of all, we'll talk about the flour. It's 00 flour. So, 00 flour is very ground flour. So, it's very, very fine. So, the first act to do is 500 grams of flour, and I'm going to sieve it just to get anything that's in the flour straight onto the table. Now, we're not going to use a pasta machine today. We're going to do it by hand. So, like they do in Italy, where the nonnas do it, and they've been doing it for centuries. So, in the middle, you're going to do a little bowl. Make it quite wide, because this is where your egg's going to go. Now, it's going to thicken with a bit of salt around it.
We call that a well, don't we, Jim?
Little well, yeah. Make it quite wide, because 100 grams of flour equals 1 egg. So when you've got your eggs, whisk your eggs up, and then pour it into the well.
Jim, tell us a bit about the nonnas and their forearms, for example.
So it's a great bit of interest to me. So as I was looking into it and looking at doing the pasta, the nonnas in Italy, when they're doing homemade pastas, the forearms are quite large. Doing pasta is quite physical hard work. And as we're going to do that, I'm just going to mix it in with the fork, just incorporating the egg like this. And as we roll out the pasta later on, I'll explain to you why the nonnas in Italy's arms are quite strong and quite powerful.
You wouldn't arm wrestle, would you?
You certainly wouldn't. We'd definitely lose.
So guys, the beef is starting to bubble away now, the fat's starting to rise to the top, and I'm using a whisk now to maintain a process where we don't have actual meatballs. If you don't cook your mince out properly, you have little lumpy bits of meatballs. If you go to a poor Italian restaurant, you're chewing away at the minced beef, you're wondering why. It's just a quick process. It's taking seconds. I could talk for Britain, and I will eventually. However, in that time, whisking away the beef, allowing the fat to rise to the top, and any excess is going up there.
Now, as I've done that with the fork, now gets the nice bit, the nice messy bit. This is when the children can get involved. Other parents get involved. You can have a team effort. So you just got to get your hands stuck in, nice and messy, and mix it all through. What we want to do is incorporate all the flour with the egg into a dough.
Now, it's very important when you're working with pastry or any kind of item or article with flour, eggs, butter, etc. You will know it's the correct consistency if it cleans the table. So if you can see actually on the table there, as Jim is moving the flour around, the table is actually creating a sheen. It's actually quite clean. It's the same if you're using a mixing machine and you have a dough hook making bread. If it comes off the sides and into the dough hook, that means it's perfect consistency, it's clean. Now, whilst Jim is out doing the nonnas in his fantastic pasta work, we're going to add the garlic. We're adding the garlic quite late in because we want to keep as much garlic flavour as we can. So with a heel knife, we're crushing down onto the edge, and this way we can remove the skin, not having to stand there, hopefully I say, and peel it for ages. There's also another thing that we can do. If you have a lot of garlic to peel, you can just blanch it, drop it in hot water, and re-roast in hot water for literally 5 or 6 seconds, and the skin will just come off straight away.
Now, while you're doing your dough, use your heel of your hand, press hard into it, fold it over, heel in the hand, and really work it. It takes about 7 to 10 minutes of quite intense work while you're doing it. You can even, it is a really good workout. Yeah, upper body, forearms.
Excellent. You may notice to my left, Marinella is already thinking ahead of the game and chopping the mushrooms. You may be asking yourself, why is she chopping mushrooms now? Why didn't they go in earlier? So we're making tortellini, and tortellini is pasta. We know this. We know that the mixture therefore has to be dry. If it's a wet mixture, it will split straight through the pasta. The mushrooms are a great absorbent of water. And what you may have noticed as well, beforehand, here's one we prepared earlier, mushrooms were hand scrubbed with a nail brush. You would never actually wash the mushrooms in water because they take all the flavour out of them as well. They're already pre-washed when they come in, so by adding more water to them, you're taking the flavour out. This will just absorb the water. The garlic is going in now, and it's very important. So whenever you go to a restaurant, you have a lovely meal, you think that sauce is amazing. You say to the chef, how did you make that sauce? It's because they seasoned it early on. Never season at the end. You can correct seasoning at the end. However, if you season early on with your salt, I'm going to take a risk here and be very camera chefy. Really goes everywhere. Bit of salt there, and some cracked black pepper. We're not using ground black pepper. We want to feel the bite, almost like a chili. Yeah. And you can substitute salt with soya. You can substitute pepper with chili as well. There's many things you can use around. Perfect. Thank you, Marinella. You're not a chef, are you? But you are as quick as a chef.
Yes.
It's fantastic. We're blessed to have you. Paprika, smoked paprika for more smoky flavour, but not really relevant which one you use. But it does give a nice sheen and a nice colour to it. Now we're using bay leaf as well.
So there's the pasta done up. It traditionally takes between 7 and 10 minutes. Do not overwork the pasta. Like say go on for 10, 15 minutes. You just overwork it and it'll dry up, get quick. And that's so what you do with this. It usually takes about an hour. So wrap it in cling film, put it in the fridge. Because when you're ready to come and use it, roll it out. Yeah, so but I've got some done already.
Here's one I made earlier. So guys, whilst Jim was unwrapping that, so I've just added some dried parsley and oregano as well. It's in the recipe attached. Your bay leaf, you need to have 1 bay leaf per 8 litres of liquid. So I'm using just a smidgen of bay leaf because we're only producing enough for 1 plate. I've seasoned nice and early on, and as that's reducing by half, there's nothing left. Now is the time for us to skim the fat. Just from the top, you can almost see like a rouge effect. It's pink, sort of almost cloudy water that you want to take off. Also, it's very key now to start thinking about what's going to really intensify the sauce, and that's going to be a reduction, your gastrique, if you like. So gastrique is a French, or gastrique, is a French terminology for infusing sugar and vinegar as well. We're using plain white caster sugar. I'm not going to throw this over my neck, it'll go down my neck, I'll be very happy. Just a little pinch like so. And some beautiful balsamic vinegar from Modena, that's where balsamic comes from. When I talk about history bolognese later, you're not too sick of my voice by then, it's very relevant to the actual dish, why we're using Modena balsamic vinegar as well. Now, very early on, rather than have the Parmesan at the end, the Parmesan comes in at this stage here. I think it's now reducing perfectly. I know you can't smell it at home, but it does smell nice, doesn't it?
I can.
Beautiful,
Yeah, beautiful, thank you. And the dish as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So your wife's perfect.
Here's my wife's perfect,
Oh, yeah.
indeed, yeah. So, tiny bit of tomato puree to bind the sauce together. We need to make it dry. We can make it wet later as the base of the dish, but for the pasta, it needs to be as dry as possible. So only literally a couple of spoonfuls of chopped tomatoes. And when you're buying chopped tomatoes that are canned, if you can, buy the more expensive ones. The Neapolina, ones like that. They're a better tomato, they're not bitter. You really shouldn't compromise. For the sake of 20 or 30p a can, you shouldn't compromise on the actual quality. And then finally, in fact, Marinella's already jumping the gun. She's going to start chopping the garnish, the basil and the fat leaf parsley. We're going to add, before I let you speak, Jim,
That's okay.
a tiny bit of cooking wine as well. Again, don't hold back, guys. If you're celebrating and having people around, the lockdown's getting eased, go for a nice wine. We've chosen the Malbec. I know it's not Italian, but it's a very good, robust wine. And that goes there. And Jim, over to you, sir.
Right, so you have your pasta, it's been resting for an hour. Take it out of the fridge. And obviously we've made 500 grams. So obviously for 1 portion we would need that. So we're going to roll it out now. So we're just going to when you're rolling it out, once again, it's quite a physical thing. Enjoyable, but physical. So when the nonnas used to roll out the pasta, later on in their later lives, they discovered they suffered a lot of them from arthritis in their fingers and wrists. And that was basically rolling the pasta out quite a lot. So what they did, to try and combat that, they used their forearms when they were rolling it out. So from here, they used to roll out like this.
Also, be very, very careful that you follow the recipe to the T. When you're working with the bolognese, you can say, well, do you know what? I know it's parmesan, but I fancy some smoked cheddar instead of that. I'm feeling smoked applewood, etc. With the pasta, there's no room for movement. It has to be exactly the same. It's also key that when you're putting the flour on the table, you may have noticed Jim threw out an angle. He wasn't just showing off, well, he was a little bit, weren't you? But it's also to not overcompensate the flour content and to alter the actual dish. Too much flour on that pasta and it dries out and you won't be able to roll it. It needs to be elastic. Notice how it's moving backwards and forwards. It's perfectly elastic. You should be able to use your fingertips to roll out first as well. It's quite simple to do.
And when you're rolling it out, you're probably looking at the size, the thickness of a penny. That's what I really equate to it. Some people can lift it up, and if you see light through it, that's fine. But usually the thickness of a penny.
Put the fresh herbs in now as well as we're approaching the culmination of making the bolognese. This really is a quick dish. Don't be scared by the amount of the plethora of ingredients that we're using here. You could use canned tomatoes, as I say. If you've got a bit more time, you can use your seasonal cherry vine tomatoes, your heritage tomatoes, and roast them off, dash of olive oil, a bit of salt in the oven, skin them, and you've got basically really fresh chopped tomato. So the flavour's there. This is what all the top chefs do, so I'm following suit. I'm going to take a little bit out now. That's going to be for Jim, for his tortellini, but we're also going to put some on the plate as well, as a small token gesture inside the tortellini. We've got to be very careful that when we do take this out, we drain the excess liquid off. So it needs to be as dry as anything. And in fact, when Jim's going to be putting the beef filling, the ragu, if you like, he's going to be using a slotted spoon at the same time as well. This needs to cool down anyway, so it's going to just here. Jim, we're almost done?
Yes, yeah.
We'll start cutting soon.
Also with your pasta, we're going to do circles, we're going to do the tortellini. Pasta dough dries out very, very quickly. So if you're not using any, cover it with a damp cloth, clean it from it and put it back in the fridge. So we're going to cut out 3 discs.
You can have as many as you like. You can have 5. You can make the pasta smaller discs and have 7 or 8. You can use them as canopies. Anything you so desire.
And with my finger, just half coat like a moon shape, and then
Approaching the moment of truth now.
there.
And take your time with this, guys, because you know it's very enjoyable if it works properly. You're not rushing things at all.
So we have something like this, and then with your pinky,
That's a small finger, Scottish small finger.
you just push it across like so, and squeeze. And there's your tortellini.
Awesome. Would you like to have a go at that?
Oh yeah,
So
definitely.
we'll do these 2 here, and
Yeah.
you can do the rest of us. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And then you take them home.
Oh, I need it before they
You
go.
eat before they go home. Indeed. So the history of food, we have obviously in China we have dim sum, which is a 1,000 things for the emperor, colloquially known as. And every nation, every continent has a very similar variation. So the Italians claim they invented pasta, the Chinese claim they invented pasta as in noodles. So if you look at the shape of these, the tortellini, very similar to dim sum, very similar to the classic starter. Do you want me to drop that in anyway?
No, don't, because it's too wet now. If the dressing or what you're filling it with just gets too wet, it just saturates the pasta. So I mean, it needs to be a mousse or dry. Marlene, do you fancy doing a couple?
Oh yeah, sure.
I'll just cut a couple out for you.
So the history of Bolognese, which I was going to touch on earlier, comes from Bologna. It's believed that during a medieval battle, Venus and Zeus conquered that part of Bologna. It was a big fight between the cities of Modena and Bologna. And they were celebrating in a tavern, and the innkeeper was bemused by Venus's navel, which was the shape of a tortellini, and that's how the dish was born. Now, Jim, what would happen if you used any other flour apart from 00 fine refined flour, and if you didn't sieve it?
You could have some impurities in it if you don't sieve
Mine
it.
is better.
That is beautiful.
Mine
That
is
is
a lot better.
much better. Yeah.
So it's very important that you spend the money on the 00 flour, the twice refined flour, and still sieve it. There's absolutely no lumps at all. And the beauty of Bolognese, it can be frozen, it can be used again and again, it can be made well in advance. The ingredients, the preparation for ingredients, mise en place, as we talked about earlier, can be created at an early stage to create a stress-free environment. You'll notice in the kitchen the size of Barings, there are various stations. There's always 2 or 3 chefs working on a station, for example. You have your fish section, your larders, cold starter section, your dessert patisserie section, you have your meat, your grill section. But here you are that chef, you are 5 chefs in one. Awesome.
And the reason that we pinch the edges, we need to get all the air out of it. So as it's cooking, the tortellini won't pop. So that's where you pinch the edges for as best you can. Don't leave any air gaps.
So it takes 2 to 3 minutes for this sort of size pasta to cook, 3 to 4 if it's slightly bigger. The dish itself is very, as a paysan dish, as the Italians would say, very rustic. At this point here, we could have added more chopped tomatoes. We're choosing not to, it's quite a wet dish already. We're ready to plate up, ready to serve. Soon the talking will be over, and you can go to your chopping boards and begin your tortellini. You've got this soft spoon, did you? Okay, be very careful to drain your pasta. Make sure there's no water. We don't need water splitting into the sauce.
And the tortellini usually takes about 4 to 5 minutes in boiling salted water.
Depending on the size, of course. This one's a little bit smaller, just taking a little bit less. We've got Parmesan cheese to garnish. We've got fresh herbs as well. It's only a small dish. I'm sorry, Marinella, but I've got some more here for you to make. There we go. Shall I do it again? Shall I throw it over my shoulder? I think I should.
Yeah,
Awesome. And a bit of Parmesan cheese. And I was going to say voila, but that's not the correct Italian. Hey presto, we have tortellini bolognese. Thank you ever so much for joining us.
Thanks very much, yeah.
I'm going for my lunch break now, belated. Thank you. Thank you for your help. Cheers.